Hey everyone, welcome to Resilient Business, where we talk to small business owners in health and wellness, human performance, recovery, rehab, and longevity. My guest today happens to fall into all those categories and probably a few more. And his name is Panos Papadiamantis with PNOE Technology. Panos, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Joe. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's been we've been planning it for a little bit, so
Yes.
we're glad we could finally put it together. So this is going to be a great conversation. Um, so to get started, I think what would be great is for you to. I'm just curious myself. How did you get started? What's your background, and how did you get started with PNOE? You're an engineer, right? So
Sure.
tell us
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
story if you would.
Yeah. Here's a TLDR on myself and how I ended up getting involved with PNOE and starting PNOE actually with my co-founder. So, engineer by trade and education. I did my first degree in mechanical engineering. That was back in Greece. I was born and raised in Greece, and did my undergraduate degree there in mechanical engineering, and then uh, continued with my graduate degree here in the United States at Stanford, where I, transitioned more towards operations research and math. Because of Silicon Valley and my passion of being an engineer and working in tech, I naturally went on to continue my career in tech. I was in a vastly different space, specifically enterprise data centers. So yeah, I came from a very, very different background, nothing to do with health or biology or wellness. But then at some point, my co-founder, Apostolos, who has been a friend of mine since the age of 6, we go back many, many years, at the time was doing his PhD in sensing technologies. That was in Cambridge, UK. And he attended a talk where people were talking about breath analysis and how breath analysis is the future of diagnostics. And indeed, there is so much potential in breath analysis based on plethora of scientific literature and studies that indicate how much we can actually infer about the human biology by analyzing human breath. And so he got fascinated by this and started to research the world of breath analysis. And so that there is one particular type of breath analysis called cardiometabolic testing, which is also known as VO2 Max testing or resting metabolic rate testing. We like to call it breath analysis or cardiometabolic testing because, as we will discuss later on, VO2 Max and resting metabolic rate are only 2 of the 23 biomarkers that you can infer through this test. So we're kind of doing it a disservice if we're calling it VO2 Max or resting metabolic rate. Um, but anyways, he saw that this type of assessment is very well established, has been around for almost 100 years, but despite its very widely accepted value in the clinical world, very, very few people know about it, and even fewer had done it. And that was until we came along. As a company, we started out with the mission of bringing this assessment to the world, to the masses, making it easy, accessible, and practical for the average clinic. And so we started out by making the actual hardware something that is affordable, practical, something that the average practitioner and clinic owner can easily integrate into their business. And then on, we developed the entire ecosystem of services that is, the human resource side of things, and then also the software side of things combined together provide the practitioner with a comprehensive solution that enables them to seamlessly take information coming from the test and translate it into a wellness plan, a report that actually means something for the end consumer, a nutrition program, a training program, and so on and so forth. And so today, PNOE is basically a combination of hardware and software. It's basically the actual metabolic breath analysis device coupled with the software and the services that you need in order to get the reports, build nutrition, training, wellness plans without having to do the hiring that you previously had to do in order to be able to serve these functions. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and PNOE.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's a great story. And you moved from one completely different industry or different educational background right into health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing, I've been in health and wellness for probably close to 25 years now, and I came
Mm-hmm.
from the software side. So I came from the healthcare IT side on the hospital health system, large practice, payer, insurance company, side of things. And what I noticed throughout the years is that um, that world is a little behind in technology, frankly, and there could have been a lot more done in that space to facilitate better outcomes, better financial management, better population health, just by creating more interoperability and more analytics and using technology tools to do all of that. And so I find it interesting that you come in with that background and now you're applying it to the health and wellness space, who needs data just as much as anybody else
Mm-hmm.
to affect better outcomes. And so to me,
Totally,
that's really exciting, and that's cool. So maybe drill into now PNOE itself and the
yeah.
product. What it does, who it serves, who uses it, who benefits from it, the value behind
Mm-hmm.
PNOE.
Totally. So, uh, PNOE, as I said, is a cardiometabolic analyzer. What a cardiometabolic analyzer does is that it analyzes three main um, uh, markers in your breath, specifically oxygen concentration, CO2 concentration, and flow volume. So you basically have three sensors working as you're doing the test and measuring these three variables in real time. And by measuring these three signals, you calculate 23 biomarkers. And these 23 biomarkers may be things that a lot of people are now familiar with, like VO2 max, resting metabolic rate. But as I said before, these are just two of the 23. The rabbit hole is a lot deeper, and there's a lot more to the test. And so some, other of the 23 biomarkers of the remaining 21 would be things like your fat and carbohydrate oxidation. This test can also reveal how many fats and carbohydrates your body's burning, how efficiently you burn these two fuels, things related to your lungs, which, by the way, respiratory dysfunctions are probably the most frequently encountered ones amongst the thousands and now hundreds of thousands of people who've tested. um, we can analyze things like your breathing rate, your tidal volume, which indicates how big your lungs are and how much you're utilizing your lungs, your ventilation efficiency, which indicates how efficiently your lungs are absorbing oxygen and clearing carbon dioxide. And by looking into all of these respiratory metrics, we can understand a lot of things about your respiratory fitness. We can understand if there is some sort of anatomical issue that is preventing you from breathing well, and this breathing abnormality may be the root cause for chronic stress, may be leading to a constant state of hypoxia, because when you're breathing abnormally, you may be breathing out too much CO2, and then less CO2 in the blood ultimately leads to less oxygenation across the body, which is a major risk factor for neurodegeneration. And then also there are metrics related to your cardiovascular fitness and your blood circulation. And so all in all, how listeners need to think about breath analysis is basically it's an assessment that looks into what we refer to as the oxygen chain, which is your lungs, your heart, and your cells. This trifecta of systems that you have in your body, which is so critical because at the end of the day, the supply of oxygen down to your cells is by far the most critical biological process in your body. The moment you disrupt that process in a matter of minutes, you're pretty much dead, because every cell requires oxygen to break down the nutrients that you have consumed, that is the fats and carbohydrates, release the energy that they contain in order to power its operation and sustain your daily functions whatever these may be. And so because this concept, which is what we refer to as metabolism, what I just described is a very basic overview of what we refer to in biology as aerobic metabolism. The whole biology of the human body and pretty much every mammalian species on this planet was developed around the concept of the oxygen chain, having lungs to absorb the oxygen, a heart to pump it, and then cells and mitochondria to actually utilize it. And so breath analysis, if you look at the literature that has been around now for about 100 years, is the only assessment known to mankind that can reliably assess the operation of these three systems individually, but also in unison. And that's why this assessment, going on to your point about who uses it, finds vast applicability in the world of cardiology, the world of pulmonology, the world of endocrinology. If you think about it, these are the specialties that deal with heart, lungs, and cells. And then also nutrition science. This assessment can tell you your resting metabolic rate, your efficiency in utilizing fats and carbs. So you can easily understand that you can use the insights of the test to personalize one's nutrition program. And then obviously sports science. Having a blockage in the oxygen chain is pretty much the equivalent of saying what your limitation is in terms of what you need to train and become better at if you want to be a better athlete. Also, training zones, as we exercise, as we train in different intensities, the fuel mix of fats and carbohydrates that we use changes, and that indicates the transition from one training zone to the other. And as a result, breath analysis is considered the gold standard for determining training zones, which is also a very important piece of information for athletes to utilize in order to make their cardio training more efficient. So you have integrative medicine professionals, you have fitness centers, you have nutrition and weight loss centers. Obviously, GLP-1s is a very big area of focus these days, because one of the purported repercussions is that when you inject GLP-1s, what can happen, what actually happens more often than not, is your metabolism starts to decline. And in certain cases, if you combine this metabolic decline with a lot of physical workout or physical stress in general, which we actually see that happening a lot, you can end up developing some sort of mitochondrial dysfunction. So using breath analysis to determine how your metabolism, your metabolic rate, and also mitochondrial function are trending as you're going through a GLP-1 treatment is of paramount importance. And so, what I like to tell people is that breath analysis looks into aerobic metabolism, which is pretty much what sustains life. And this is what makes it a very, very foundational assessment. And so any place, any clinic, any wellness center, any establishment that remotely deals with health and wellness should have a breath analysis device, ideally as the first screening tool to understand what is happening in first principles with a person's body that we are trying to optimize. The beauty of breath analysis at the end of the day is that it is a very simple assessment. Put a mask on, you breathe normally, you don't have to do it. The easiest test in the world. You just have to breathe normally for 7 to 10 minutes. That's the resting test. And then additionally, you can do the exercise test. That's optional, which is, again, the same setup. Put the mask on, get on a treadmill or a bicycle, and then exercise with increasing intensity for about 10 minutes. And so it's non-invasive. You don't have to pierce anyone, draw samples or anything. It's instant. You don't need to send lab work, and it's pretty well encompassing, meaning that it touches upon, scans upon the main systems of human biology.
Yeah, awesome. And I heard recently a statistic about the metabolic health, and I think this was a U.S. statistic, but it might be similar throughout the world, where in the U.S. only 6 to 7% of the population is metabolically healthy.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, Yeah.
with the current ranges and markers
Yeah.
and things. And so that means 93% of people are not
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote metabolically healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting when you say that pretty much anybody anywhere near remotely close to the health and wellness space, it really applies to almost everyone, because
Mm-hmm.
you have 93% of the people running around that could probably use some help.
Mm-hmm.
But then even the 6 or 7% of the people who maybe would be outside that range of needing
Mm-hmm.
help, they
Mm-hmm.
might be performance athletes and other people who are
Oh, 100%.
generally metabolically healthy,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, but
Mm-hmm.
now they need an elegant way, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
to help them manage the efficiency of their training program and stuff. So I could see where PNOE would apply to pretty much the whole population.
And that's what we're seeing with our customer base. Right now, we serve thousands of practices, which range the entire gamut, right? It's anything from high-end fitness centers like Equinox and Remedy Place in New York to integrative medicine clinics, to chiropractic clinics, physical therapy clinics, um, and then also weight loss centers, wellness centers, resorts like Four Seasons, but then also CrossFit boxes, low-end fitness centers that have the population to support a fitness assessment like PNOE are customers of ours. And so the insights are certainly applicable to whoever walks through your door.
Yeah.
And it's something that I alluded to in the beginning. As a company, we didn't just build the hardware, we built the entire mechanism, engagement mechanism, so to speak, which is the hardware, the software, and the human capital support that we provide to our affiliates. And so we can customize the reports, we can customize the app, we can customize the nutrition program, the training program, so that it adapts to the population you're dealing with. Just because breath analysis is relevant to a heart failure patient just as much it is relevant to an athlete, doesn't mean that these two people should receive the same type of training, programming, and approach. We totally appreciate that. These are two very, very different cases, despite the fact that the fundamental principles may remain the same, right? And so we are able to differentiate our messaging, our content, our product, the end result, and what is ultimately delivered to the end consumer to a very high degree, because we also control the entire process.
Yeah, which is nice,
Yeah.
because people in the wellness space, especially, that's who I deal with. So that's
Mhm.
sort of the context that I would think of it in. Are really trying to scale their efforts and scale their time and their
Mhm.
expertise to really be practicing sort of at the top of their license or credential,
Mhm.
at any given time. And so anytime you can incorporate a tool where they're able to outsource some of that heavy lifting or some of that processing, that's
Mhm.
fantastic, or some of that education even, that's fantastic. And I've been a little bit exposed to how you guys do that. And
Mhm.
then second, I want to talk about sort of the life cycle of the experience of the patient, let's say, when
Mhm.
they go in. But I just
Mhm.
love the way, it's great to have something where you can get objective data. I've been in biohacking a while. You're in the biohacking space. We see so many tools and therapies and supplements and approaches and all these disciplines that people are trying to put into play. And I don't see a whole lot of objective, simple,
Mhm.
easy,
Mhm.
thorough,
Mhm.
precise type of management of these
Mhm.
things, to just make sure not only are
We're on
you
the right track. Yeah.
we're on the right track from a
Yeah.
clinical and a
Mhm.
results standpoint, and
Mhm.
definitely a financial standpoint, because
Mhm.
people are out there spending a lot of
A
money
lot of
on
money.
a lot of products. And
Yeah.
if you don't have a way to have guardrails and have
Mhm.
touch points and have
Mhm.
checkpoints, on
Mhm.
how you're doing,
Mhm.
it can be overwhelming. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
people even
Mhm.
end up giving up, or
Mhm.
dialing it way back, or doing something completely counterproductive, just because they
Mhm.
can't figure out how to get their arms around their their progress in some
Totally.
cases.
I was reading this morning that wellness spending in the US, I think, is going to top 2 trillion for 2025, which is crazy to think that, this thing is exploding at that level. And, again, to the point that you just made, people need to know, because this is purely discretionary income. Uh, People need to know if what they're spending money on is ultimately pushing the envelope, pushing the needle when it comes to their health, right? And so there's absolutely a need for quantification. And as a company, this is something that we focus a lot on. We work with several companies in the biooptimization space. We just like to call it biooptimization. We don't like the word
Yeah,
biohacking, but yeah,
sure.
anyways, that's just semantics. But we work with many companies developing these treatments to help them quantify the impact that their treatment has on human biology. And this is what we're doing with you guys.
Yeah.
We gathered some preliminary data, which was very, very insightful and promising. And that's why we're considering doing a full-blown study now. And we've done that with other devices like NanoV.
Mhm.
And we have some other collaborations in the work with big companies in the space, in the light therapy and other fields that we're going to be announcing soon. And so, yeah, there's 100% a big need, and that's not going to only help people choose what's best for their biology and sort of like separate the effective treatments from the not so effective ones. It will also lend a lot of credibility to the space, which is very much needed if the space is to reach mainstream adoption, right? Because, and let's face it, there's definitely a lot of buzz, and we're talking big numbers, 2 trillions of wellness spend, whatever, but still, it is very much on the fringes of our society.
Mhm.
And I mean, with the current administration, there's a big push to make it a greater part of the political agenda and all that stuff. But there has to be credible data that this thing works if we are to make these things truly mainstream and get the traditional medical establishment to sort of adopt them.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why I'm so excited about our partnership is,
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with Pulse for 8 years, and I know that people enjoy Pulse. They get great
Mm-hmm.
results from Pulse. They use it consistently. They make it part of their lives. They treat it as nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people who are most successful with it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if I add a layer of being able to measure progress, I
Mm-hmm.
think that
That's big.
just
Obviously.
that's just huge. And,
Yeah.
when I look for partners, I look for partners in 3 categories, and everything sort of Pulse is my hub, of course, because that's what I'm doing. And then I look for collaborations who can either enhance the experience of Pulse, can enhance the efficiency from a stacking standpoint. So like a NanoV or a Brain Tap, or supplemental like a Stem Regen, or somebody who's offering something that's been vetted and is successful and efficacious, but can be combined with Pulse to save some time and do some
Mm-hmm.
stacking. And then the third category is where you guys sit. Well, you may also sit in the second category as well, but the third category is validation. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I was super excited about, having Pulse and you guys come together, and
Totally.
I'm just
Yeah.
looking forward to
Yeah.
seeing how that evolves and what value we can bring for each other.
100%. And just touch upon the previous question about what the customer journey looks like. Pretty simple.
Thanks. Yeah.
Um, you walk in, most successful clinics will have PNOE as the first thing you do when you walk in, because it's the easiest way to get a non-invasive and instant and very well encompassing view of your biology. Um, you conduct a test, which is 7 to 10 minutes, sitting on a lounge chair or in a comfortable position, breathing normally. We get the data over the cloud automatically. My team is going to analyze the information, put together the report for you, and then um, we train you on how to provide the consultations. And in many cases, we can also jump in and provide the consultation to the end consumer. that really depends on the workflow that you want to implement in your practice. And then following this, there's 3 different prescriptions that we can help develop. One is nutrition planning. People can fill out a very comprehensive questionnaire where we record preferences, restrictions, all the additional information that we need in order to put together a very personalized nutrition program. We have registered dietitians who do that, so everything that we send out to the end consumer is in compliance in whatever state you are in the United States. We can do the same for workout plans. And then another very important thing is what we can do is we can bring into our software all the different biooptimization services, IV treatments, and supplements that you provide in your facility. And then depending on the biological limitations we identify from the test, we are going to create a plan that includes the services, IVs, and supplements from within your practice that are most applicable to the biological limitations that we picked up. And so the way to think about it is easy, non-invasive biometric testing, and then streamlined nutrition, training, and biooptimization programming. This is what PNOE sells you.
Yeah. So it's end to end. I mean, it
That's
is
it, yeah.
a
And it
turnkey.
has to be, sorry, one last point, because
Yeah.
we've seen that happening time and time again, not just with breath analysis devices, with body composition analysis devices, with all kinds of biometric testing devices that didn't really provide the full spectrum of services that you need in order to make the information useful for the end consumer.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why a lot of people developed sort of not necessarily mistrust, but they were like disenchanted after doing a VO2 Max test or a resting metabolic rate test with one of the predicate devices, pre-existing devices, was because if you see the report coming out of these devices, they pretty much contains your VO2 Max as a value, or your VO2 Max is like 57 and you're in the top 5%, your training zones, and then your resting metabolic rate. This is information that is useless to the average person, in the sense that it doesn't tell me where I may have an issue in my biology. It doesn't tell me what I need to do to fix it, in terms of training, in terms of nutrition, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of biooptimization. So I pretty much paid $250 or whatever the cost is to get 3 numbers, which I can't really do anything with, right? And so you need to address these issues, irrespectively of whether you're selling a breath analysis device, a body composition device, or something else.
Yeah, and I went through the process with PNOE. I had a test done, an RMR test, at one of the conferences where we met you guys. And a couple of weeks later, I was on a video conference with one of your staff, and she was reviewing my results with me. And I thought it was an easy process, very simple, very educational. I kept, the records of it and everything, and so I can look back on it if I like. And I had a little bit of a good delta on my biological age, which is always encouraging. And
That's
so
awesome.
I think people like to see that number at the end.
Yeah. No,
too.
biological age is one of the heavy hitters in our reports. One of the reasons why biological age is something that we pride ourselves with is because biological age is effectively a fancy way of describing mortality risk, right? And VO2 Max, which is one of the metrics that we analyze, is probably the most powerful variable, the most powerful metric for predicting your mortality risk. And so the biological age that PNOE is going to give you is likely going to be one of the most accurate ones. And so a lot of people are looking for that, and obviously it becomes a pretty major selling point for the clinics that have PNOEs.
Yeah. And I'd love to transfer, sort of progress into that exact topic in
Mhm,
terms of practices that are
mhm,
employing PNOE. Can you talk a little bit more, give an overview on the integration into the practice, how they're
mhm,
putting it in, how they're packaging it, and who administers it when the patient does come in for the breath
mhm.
analysis part of it? If you kind of go
Yeah,
over
yeah,
that, that'd
yeah.
be helpful.
Yeah. Let's go from, the end. So who administers the test? So typically, it could be anyone really in the clinic, right? So using the device is very simple, only requires about an hour of training with our customer support team. So any person doesn't have to be an MD or a PA, or could be a person who's working at the front desk. You can train them on how to utilize and administer the test. We do all the analysis, so you never really have to dive into the science. We do, however, provide a very comprehensive educational package, which is a certification process, and then a few other tools that could enable you to do the analysis if you wanted to, or be able to explain pretty much everything to the end consumer around what is going on under the hood. So all that is there if you want it. Um, so any person can administer the test. How do people sell it and package it? There's a few models. There's the obvious, most basic one, which is the cost plus model, which is, uh, resting metabolic rate test is going to sell for 150, and then a VO2 Max test for 250, and then if you add the nutrition program, it's X more, and then if you add the nutrition, is Y more, and whatnot. So very straightforward way of selling it and packaging it. Then there's a few more creative processes and ways of integrating it, which we've seen to be more advantageous for the business. One would be to provide a resting test to everyone who walks in free of charge. And that is a great tool, especially if you're offering a lot of IVs, services, and stuff like that, because you use our recommendation engine to provide a personalized plan for that person. And then you have a lot more chances of selling more of these services, IVs, and supplements, right? Uh, so that's one other way that people are using it quite successfully. And then you have places that don't really sell any biooptimization service or supplements, and what they do is they still give out the resting test for free, but then they upsell the exercise test, and then they upsell nutrition or training programs. So it's more like a freemium model, but with a more narrow spectrum of services that could ensue as upsells. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And let's see. You have customers all over the world, right? You're not just domestic in the U.S. Is that correct?
Yeah, most of our sales volume is obviously the US for many
Okay.
reasons, but we do have customers all over the world. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just I've drawn a lot of parallels between what you're saying and how we operate at Pulse, and what our technology and our footprint and process and things like that. We do our
Mhm,
training the same way. People can get trained and certified. It doesn't matter who it is. No credentials needed. Lots of similarities. So
mhm.
it's all good. Um, is there anything else you'd like to mention about the product offering, the support, the practice integration, any of those that I may have missed, or can we maybe jump into another question, just general about the industry?
No, I guess we covered the important topics. As a company, we're investing a lot in product development, especially on the software side. We're building up integrations with lab work and other important biometric tests to effectively enable
Like Google.
our customers to use our report and our dashboard as a single point for visualizing all of their patients' data. And so the lab work integration that we're launching very soon is going to be a major um, improvement in the whole offering that we provide. So instead of having the PNOE report visualize just breath data, It visualizes, merges, and combines information
Mm.
from breath, blood, urine, stool, and many other sources. Um, our app also does integration with every wearable device, and there's a patient monitoring dashboard that you know effectively becomes a hub where you see all of your wearable data, all of your lab data, and very soon scheduling data, so that you have one single point for tracking pretty much the entire journey of your customer. So we're constantly evolving our ecosystem of services, and people that sign up with us actually get the benefit of that, which is great. There's uh, a lot of cost savings that we're seeing amongst our affiliates who don't need to use like 3 or 4 different software tools, and just use the PNOE platform in addition to the breath analysis device, and they can pretty much almost pay for the cost of the package by eliminating some of the other software subscriptions they have.
Fantastic. No, that's good. And that's a great segue, because the next question I wanted to ask you is industry wide. You just talked about tailwinds with the $2 trillion in money in this industry, and all the energy and people paying more attention to their health and wellness and progress and longevity. What are some of the headwinds that you perceive coming up? What are some of the challenges that are going to maybe apply to your specific segment of the industry, or just sort of the wellness and health and longevity and human optimization industry in general, if there are any?
Yeah. I mean, right now with, all the consumer exuberance and the favorable like political landscape, it's very difficult to come up with a specific headwind. I guess, it's not necessarily a headwind, but it's more of a concern that I always have, which is, with all of this craze around the different treatments, the different protocols, the different things that are coming up, and with the deregulation that is sort of happening, right? Or at least the sentiment towards deregulation. I'm concerned about legitimacy and mainstream adoption, uh, because of the fact, it's what I said earlier. If we do not prove efficacy and real health outcomes, then no matter how many trillions of dollars we end up spending, it is unlikely to think that this is, will ever become a mainstream trend, right? And so
Mhm.
I think there is, very much a need for, um, um, scientific validation of the things happening in the industry. Um, we're part of the A4M community, and we're gold sponsors for A4M. And I think as a community and as an organization, it has helped push the envelope in integrative medicine and wellness a lot. But at the same time, if you walk the trade show floor in Vegas or West Palm, you're going to see a lot of, dubious and questionable technologies and things that are being advocated. And obviously, like A4M can only do so much to regulate all of that. But uh, it just goes to say that there's a lot of potential in this industry, but at the same time there's still a lot of frothiness, and if we do not have certain checks in place, then we run the risk of creating a huge community of shenanigans that will end up having a very serious negative effect on all the good stuff that also exists in the industry, which, don't get me wrong, are very, very important and critical for uh, our nation's health and global health in general. Because we all understand that there has to be a path for alternative medicine, holistic medicine to become mainstream, and our world is the world that is going to give rise to that holistic and alternative medicine, and we just need to protect it from all the shenanigans that we also have in the space. uh, I perceive them almost as the biggest threat to the space. But it's not like I'm seeing a trend of unvalidated things and unproven things to be kind of taking over. If anything, I would say it's kind of the opposite. I think with people like Brian Johnson having like a very rigorous and scientific approach to the things that he's applying. If anything, there's a greater push towards being scientific and rigorous by the average consumer when he or she is buying and consuming services and treatments. And so, if anything, there's a reverse trend happening, but still, I think there's a lot of frothiness out there, and we always need to be mindful of that.
Yep. No, I think that's very well said. Okay, well, as we wrap up today, Panos, is there anything else you'd like to touch on, or maybe let people know how they could find out more about PNOE or contact you or your
Absolutely,
staff?
yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything. If anyone is interested in learning more about PNOE and how it can help their business, visit our Instagram page at PNOE Analytics. That is PNOE Analytics. By the way, PNOE in Greek means breath. So, easy for people to remember that.
Yes.
And then, or our website, PNOE.com. There's many links, many options to get in touch with someone, download our ebook where we have a lot of, deep dive information. And if you're a consumer, you can reach out to us via Instagram, and then we reply with a locator that we have. It's not fully public yet because we're doing like a big overhaul, but still we can send you a link so that you can schedule a test with one of our trusted affiliates that is closer to you.
Fantastic. Yep. And I'll include the links down below in
Yep.
the notes, and people can get in touch with you. And folks, you can always reach out to me if you have questions about any of the people who appear on Resilient Business. Panos, I'd love to thank you for being with us today on Resilient Business, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much, Joe. It was a pleasure.